Hello and welcome to part 2 of the video where I'm showing you how I rig my DD Hammocks 3m by 3m tarp. In this part we're going to look at some of the specific techniques, knots and things that we use to make sure the tarp is in the place we want it to be and tensioned nicely. So at one end of the ridgeline we have a releasable knot. It's a knot that can be released under tension. It's a variation on the bowline, which is a common mountaineering and climbing and just general use knot. The variation means that it can be released even when under tension, just like I'm about to demonstrate here. 1, 2, 3, there you go. So really useful knot, and to show you how it's put together we're going to run through it in several stages. So we'll look at it at different angles, at different speeds. And if you feel like you've missed a bit, then just scroll back through the video and you should see what you need to see. So there we are. It just ties like a normal bowline, but instead of pulling the end through, you just pull a bite of rope through and then tighten it up on there. So here we have it in slightly slower speed. Just take the end around the tree, flip it over to make a loop on one side, and then take the short end, pass it through the loop, over that piece, and then pull a loop of rope, not the end, back through the first loop that you made and tighten it up. There we go. And then the live end, the bitter end of the rope, just gets tucked through that loop there. That's not necessary, but it does mean that no one's going to undo your ridgeline by accident. It just won't undo if you pull it through there. So from a different angle, the first loop over that end, and then pull a bite of the live end. A bite is a name for a loop of rope rather than the end, or some people call it the bitter end of the knot there. So it's a nice knot. It won't tighten up, it'll stay at a fixed length, it won't tighten onto the tree, and it's just the way I like to do it. So again, from another ankle, from slightly above, through that first loop, over the line, and then pull the bite of loop back through. So I will have to say again, it's not a knot I recommend for general mountaineering use or any kind of safety use, but for putting up a ridgeline for a tarp, it's absolutely fine. It's a really good strong knot. It's as strong as any other knot that you can tie onto there, and it will also release under tension very easily, particularly with climbing accessory cord like this, but it also works really well with paracord and other nylon man-made cords. So that's what we have at one end of the ridgeline. Nice and secure, and there we go. So for the next stage we need to have a knot that we can use to tension the guy line. So this is at the other end of the tarp setup, the other tree. I'm taking the other end of the rope around the tree, putting a bit of tension on, but not too much. As you can see, I'm holding it there, just my fingers, and then we wrap it around just once and pull. You can see how that tightens the ridgeline. And then we go around back to the other side, put the end of the rope around again, and pull. So every time we do this, we take a little bit of the slack out of the ridgeline, and it just slowly tightens it up until we've only got enough just to tie the end off. So this could be any knot now. I'm just putting a little bit more tension on there, wrapping it over twice, and then tucking it into the little V that's made by the tightening and back through itself. But any knot could work there. It doesn't really matter because we have a releasable knot at the other end, and as long as the ridgeline is tight enough to twang like that, then you know you're about at the right tension. There is going to be a small amount of stretch with any cord you put up there, even if it's climbing accessory cord like this, which is very low stretch. There will be a small amount, and if you're using two fairly thin trees, then actually they will start to bend and move towards each other when you start tensioning the guy line, which was something I noticed when I started using this method. So it is something to watch out for, but as you can see there, I'm putting just enough tension in to tighten the ridgeline to the point I want it, and without damaging the bark of the tree. This is western hemlock spruce that I'm rigging up between here, but this method it tends to spread the load over the tree enough to not dig into it. If you are putting your tarp up for any extended period of time, it is something you want to watch out for, and you maybe want to move your tarp and your ridgeline occasionally, or even just move further up the tree. So again, from a slightly different angle, we're just wrapping it around once, pulling tight, all the way around the tree, back to the other side. And you want to be careful as you're pulling that end through, particularly if you've melted the end of the rope to stop the internal and external fibres coming apart, because you've ended up with a sharp plastic end, so you do want to be careful that you don't whip that around into your eye. It is something I've seen happen to people when they're working at night with head torches and they're tired. It's something just to be aware of when you're using any kind of synthetic cordage that requires the ends to be melted together to keep them together. So a nice simple ridgeline, tensioned enough to twang without any complicated knots. The tarp itself hangs from the ridgeline via two prussics. A prussic is a particular type of knot that is a loop of cord wrapped around a slightly thicker cord or rope in such a way that when you pull on it, it will constrict and grab the rope very tightly, but when you loosen it and slide it, it will just slide up and down the rope. So it's a great way of making an adjustable attachment point, which is exactly what you want for this kind of setup. And if you use some small metal carabiners, or I've got some climbing mayons here, or whatever adjustable system you have, you can leave the prussics attached to the ridgeline and then just readjust your tarp and attach it to different corners to get it where you want it to be. So to make a prussic, you need to start with around about 6-8 inches or so, about 15 centimeters of cord. Tie the ends together to make a loop, and then put the loop over the ridgeline and keep passing it through itself until you can do that. So you've got at least 3 there. Pull it tight, and then you can attach the mayon or carabiner or whatever other clipping device you have onto it. So in close up and slightly slower, passing through itself once, twice, and 3 times. There you go, and you pull it tight and dress it nice and neatly, and you can then just attach the carabiner there. And then if you put force on it and pull on it in either direction, it will lock up, but if you take the pressure off and just put your fingers behind the back of the knot, it will slide into position. So the classic prussic, it's a great way of making a movable attachment point on your ridgeline. So guylines and pegs are fairly simple. I'm clearing away a patch there to make sure I'm not sticking my hand into anything that's going to bite me or sting me. It's a good practice to have even if you are in the UK where there's nothing really that's going to harm you. Just putting the tent peg in there with my foot to make sure it's nice and secure, and then moving to the adjuster on the guy line, pulling down with one hand and then sliding up with the other on the adjuster just to get it to the point I want. Looking at the tarp, make sure there are no creases on that corner, but it will all neaten itself up as you work your way around the tarp. If you want to lift one edge of the tarp up off the ground or want to readjust the guy lines, you can just wrap it once around a stick or a branch, a canoe paddle, trekking pole, whatever object you have to hand, and you can use that to lift the edge of the tarp and then bring the guy line back to the ground. So there's one adjusted already there, and I'm just adjusting another one in the background. So it's really simple. Just take your object, your branch or whatever it is, put it loosely into the ground. You're not driving it to the ground, just making sure it's got a secure footing, wrapping the guy line once around it very simply, and then you keep the tension on all the way to the ground, putting the tent peg in through the loop at the bottom, and then just finding a place for it in the ground in between the stones and the rocks that we have about an inch under the forest floor here, and then just using my boot to tap it into the ground there and then adjust the guy line. The tarp does have a bit of a wrinkle, but that will come out when I adjust the other corners. So thank you for watching part 2. As I said at the beginning of part 1, there are lots of different ways to rig a tarp. There are lots of different techniques you can use. Some people prefer one method over another. This is just the method that I found works best for me with my experience and the places around the world that I go to. It's also one of the methods we teach on our courses, but we also teach on our courses that there are lots of different ways of achieving the same thing. So if you've got a different way that achieves the same thing, that you end up with a tarp that it gives you shelter from above or from the wind, you can replicate that in lots of different situations, and you can do it when you're tired, with a head torch, in the dark, when you're pitching camp later than you want it to be, then that's absolutely fine. If you've got some methods you want to share with us, why not put them in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.